I look back at 2017, I think of just political chaos.
The Russian investigation has gone on for a long, long time.
The Me Too movement, that was a huge news event.
You had a lot of powerful men that really saw a precipitous fall from grace. Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey. The list is long, it is luminous, and it was shocking.
I feel like I'm gonna need a drink after this.
2017 is a little bit like the scene in a movie where, you fought the battle, you think you're done, and then like over the hill comes an army 4 times the size.
Think about all the mayhem around the Trump White House and America's kind of retreat from the rest of the world, dropping out of the Paris Agreement.
Fake news is everywhere.
2017, hard unsubscribe. Like, could not hit unsubscribe fast enough. It's spam, it's marked as junk, I never want to get it again, goodbye.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
So in January, Trump was inaugurated, and it was a really bizarre day for a lot of people because, a lot of people didn't think this would happen. A lot of people wondered if he would maybe tone it down for his inauguration speech, but he didn't. I think he made like 2 blood references.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
We all wanted just some moment of comedy, and George W. Bush really provided that. It was a rainy day, it was a dark day, and he had this raincoat that he could not figure out how it worked.
Yes, I even made that my cover photo. I loved that moment. I think it kind of brought us together because people on the right and the left could laugh in a really good-hearted way about the absolute ridiculousness of him not being able to get on a poncho.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute, alternative facts?
Shortly after the inauguration, we got the debut of the term alternative facts. Alternative facts, it's like the truth, but like remix. Like, so Kellyanne Conway was like, okay, so that's the truth, but we have alternative facts, which is also the truth, but not.
It used to be that there was the truth, and that was the thing that had happened. And now we have this strange thing where anything that the media reports isn't necessarily the truth. It's a set of facts, and then I think Kellyanne Conway came up with this term for facts that the administration wants to have that are different.
Well, I know Kellyanne, so let me say this. I know what she was trying to say. It didn't come out the best. But here's what she was trying to say. That if you're looking at an issue, there's 10 things that might be true. And one side might only talk about 5 things that are true, and the other side might talk about 5 things. So what she's talking about other facts that aren't being talked about. That's what I think she meant. I'll give her a little bit of a mulligan on that, but wasn't her best soundbite.
No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. That's what you guys should be writing and covering. That this, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives.
If you have to have Sean Spicer as the press secretary, thank goodness for Melissa McCarthy to make it worthwhile.
Settle down! Settle down! I know that myself and the press have gotten off to a rocky start.
Like, for someone whose job is to communicate and be a public speaker, he sucked at it. Like, he couldn't communicate and he couldn't publicly speak.
Melissa McCarthy just nailed it. She got his complete unhindered id, basically this rage that he just had for everybody. And they gave her a podium that moved around so that she could basically physically attack all the reporters, which I'm sure is something that Sean Spicer would have just loved.
It is the top of the hour, and we want to take you to D.C. We've been monitoring the Women's March coming out of Washington and across the entire world.
They were expecting about 200,000, and organizers tell us there were about 500,000.
Well, the Women's March was an incredible and powerful thing. I wish it hadn't had to exist, but I'm so glad that it did exist. It was basically the women of America just gathering together for the purposes of claiming that we are here and we are a group that has to be paid attention to in a way that it really felt like this administration was not.
It was this really powerful moment that brought literally hundreds of thousands of people together.
Kind of insane that we had to have an activism group just to say that women deserve attention and rights and fair treatment.
We're not taking this crap anymore. Like, we're going to stand up for ourselves and we're gonna fight, and we don't care how you see us or how we're described. We're just going to get what's ours and what we deserve.
I feel like it was a great precursor to women coming together again at the end of the year.
The way that sexual harassment, gender dynamics have become something that we talk about every day. Part of the reason is the reaction to Trump, and then the Women's March, and then all of these things that built from it.
You can't say definitively today that guns shouldn't be in schools?
Well, I will refer back to Senator Enzi and the school that he was talking about in Wapiti, Wyoming. I think probably there, I would imagine that there's probably a gun in the school to protect from potential grizzlies.
She said that people need guns in schools because grizzly bears might show up.
I know when I was in elementary school, I often opened my locker and there was a bear inside, and I thought during those times, what if I had a big gun?
I think she admitted she was not as well prepared as she should have been. I know Betsy, I think she's doing a great job. Probably wasn't the best moment for her. Some senators definitely got her on her heels.
I remember I got on Twitter and I saw Betsy DeVos and grizzly bears were trending, and I was like, oh, so this is what the day is gonna be. This is what we're getting into this morning.
President Trump signed an executive order today he says will keep out Islamic terrorists.
The president's executive action will implement what he calls extreme vetting of immigrants.
Measures to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of the United States of America. We don't want them here.
The travel ban, I'm glad you called it that, because some people call it other things, but it totally isn't.
Trump suddenly announces that, he's gonna ban, not Muslims, but he's gonna ban people from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. And there is an uproar.
Pandemonium was let loose, to say the least, and there was the famous scenes at the airport where people were rallying and trying to block. The ACLU filed lawsuit.
Lawyers showing up to help people who needed it or were having trouble traveling or getting where they needed to go.
It was an interesting American moment.
Her name was a bit longer than most, but in the 1970s, she only needed a one-word introduction.
Mary.
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 Mary Richards may not have shattered the glass ceiling, but she sure opened the door, and millions of women followed her in.
When I found out that my icon, Mary Tyler Moore, had died, I was so sad and so shocked that I threw my imaginary hat into the air in memoriam. She was one of the funniest people that's ever been put on this earth. She has such a legacy. She is such an inspiration for women, for working women, for comedians. Her reach is so far, and to lose her is horrible. And someone please check on Dick Van Dyke, because if we lose him too, I will be really sad.
The Trump administration faces a high-level shakeup after less than a month in office. The president's national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, suddenly resigned late last night.
After just 22 days on the job, General Michael Flynn abruptly stepped down from his top national security post. In his resignation letter, Flynn blamed the fast pace of events during the presidential transition for causing him to, quote, inadvertently leave out key details of phone calls with the Russian ambassador prior to inauguration.
General Flynn admitted he didn't tell Vice President Mike Pence and other officials everything about those discussions. He is the shortest serving national security advisor now in modern history.
So Michael Flynn is going to go down as one of the signature characters of the early Trump administration. He goes on stage, the RNC, lock her up, right? He's a general, right? And we're supposed to trust generals in this country, and he seems dynamic.
Heavy focus of the Russia investigation. We don't know yet how involved his involvement with Russia is. We do know he was registered as a foreign agent under Turkey and Erdogan, which is not acceptable, obviously.
Wait a second. What exactly is he doing? Who was he talking to in Russia? Wait, he did that with Turkey?
So Mike Flynn was the first of the Trump administration to have to step down or be fired or resign because of shady dealings with Russia. So it was really the first of what would be many. It's like, oh, he did it, but nobody else did. And then, 2 months later, it's, oh, well, also he did, but nobody else.
He pled guilty. And he pled guilty to lying to the FBI, but more importantly, he will give whatever evidence he has about Trump to Robert Mueller. And now Trump says he doesn't have anything, we didn't do anything illegal, there may be no evidence. We'll see.
Guys, I'm sorry. No, there's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
Yo, that Best Picture mix-up at the Oscars was probably the only good thing that happened to black people in 2017. Moonlight was such an incredible movie that I think people were really sad when it didn't win Best Picture, but it's kind of like, you win some, you lose some. And I was about to turn off my television and be like, get out of my house, like Oscar watchers, because I had like a party. And just as I was about to hit power off on my TV,
I saw somebody run across the stage and it just felt weird, and I was like, yo, it would be so crazy if this was like a Steve Harvey moment.
Then all of a sudden, he sort of gets this message, and he's like, oh my God, no, never mind, Moonlight, you guys won, come up, you guys won. And it was so weird.
And everyone in my house stood on my couch, which I'm still trying to fix, and was like, what?
I'm so baffled as to how something like that happens.
It's the Oscars, and you go and you fudge it up by giving the wrong award to Best Picture.
Chris was just telling me how he felt much more comfortable with my being here. Get out. Sorry, man. Get out! Yo!
Oh my God, I can't. I literally get chills thinking about Get Out.
I'm so happy that Get Out is getting the recognition it deserves because it is a perfectly done film. Jordan Peele had such a good idea and executed it so well. From top to bottom, that cast is everything. The conceit of the movie is everything. And it still makes me a little scared when people take my picture with Flash.
Get Out seemed to be one of those movies that comes along once in a generation that totally resets itself. It's about racism in America in a very interesting way. And not overt racism in America, but sort of racism built into the fabric of the culture and those who think that they are not racist. Very interesting perspective on it. That was also terrifying and fascinating and a really fantastic movie. And it became a huge hit.
Everybody watched the Super Bowl last night? Hell of a game. Biggest comeback in Super Bowl history. The Falcons were running away with it. I almost turned it off. It was 28-3. Then in the third quarter, FBI Director James Comey announced he was opening an investigation into Matt Ryan's emails.
Patriots go down 28-3. Everybody's despairing. My kids are like, we're not gonna watch. I was like, just watch.
Tom Brady, it definitely proved that he is the greatest of all time in this past Super Bowl. And the Falcons, it was a terrible time to be a Falcons fan in the second half.
You suddenly see this team that I like because I'm from Boston, but I also like because of the way they're coached and the discipline they have. And I actually like Tom Brady and his diet, and he drinks 12 gallons of water and eats only broccoli. I like seeing a guy like that succeed.
Did Tom Brady win or did the Falcons lose? I mean, that really comes down to, I guess, what kind of fan you are.
I know you're not supposed to root for the team that's already won 4 Super Bowls. You should root for the underdog, but I thought it was amazing. And I'm sorry to the rest of America because I know everybody else hates the Patriots.
Well, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson is facing some backlash after referring to slaves as immigrants.
That's what America is about. A land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less.
I gotta thank Ben Carson because he informed me that I am actually the descendant of immigrants. I always thought I was a descendant of slaves, but it turns out my slave ancestors were immigrants, according to legendary doctor and not historian, but Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson.
Ben Carson, what are you thinking? He's a brain surgeon, and yet he says these completely oddly dunderheaded things.
Immigration definitely has to imply the willingness to leave, to come to a new place. There was no willingness there.
But they too had a dream.
They had a dream of not being slaves.
Tonight, President Trump is facing his first crisis requiring decisions that only a president can make. Tonight, the Pentagon is presenting Mr. Trump with options for a U.S. strike on the Syrian regime, a response to that nerve gas attack this week that killed more than 80 Syrian civilians.
Abdul Hamid al-Yusuf lost his 9-month-old twins in the attack, Aya and Ahmed. "Say goodbye, my loves," he said, before he buried them along with his wife and several other family members.
There's certain photos that come across that really wake you up to the realities of what is happening in other parts of the world, and that was a photo that really broke your heart.
So one of the saddest things is what happens with Syria, where we forget about it, and we don't talk about it. And there's no news from Syria, and we don't really know what's happening in the world. There's no stories. And then something awful happens. There's a gas attack, or somebody washes up ashore. And then suddenly the world fixates on it for a minute. And the way our attention spans flutter right now, it's crazy.
That was a big deal. Remember, it was, the Tomahawk missiles got launched and, hit the targets at the airport, and people thought it could be escalated further.
For the most part, I think Americans were proud that we took a stand and we said, no, that was wrong, that was a crime against humanity, and we have to respond to it.
We didn't use chemical weapons in World War II. You had someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
Oh, God.
Hitler didn't use chemical weapons. Not true. There should be a standard rule to just never bring up a Hitler reference in a White House briefing. It never goes well. He broke that rule.
Everybody learned about gas chambers. Everybody learned about gas chambers when you learn about the Holocaust. How could you say that this didn't happen?
And then try to defend it in this incredibly bizarre way.
I think when you come to sarin gas, he was not using the gas on his own people the same way that Assad is doing. I mean, there was clearly, I understand your point, thank you.
Well, good morning, girls.
Good morning, Aunt Lydia.
I friggin' love The Handmaid's Tale. There was no show that was more visually recognizable or apropos for 2017.
The Handmaid's Tale was an adaptation of a Margaret Atwood novel. That's a classic. I mean, a lot of people read it in English class.
It's set in this very religious dystopia where women have essentially lost all of their rights. And I think it resonated with so many people because a lot of women, especially this year, felt very marginalized and as if their rights or the things that they deserve were being steadily stripped away.
Watching The Handmaid's Tale was like watching the year 2017, the sequel. I was like, gotta fit my head for this bonnet because it's happening.
This 3-prong gadget is the latest fad, spinning out of control with kids.
Some of them are rainbow, tie-dye. Spinning them is oddly satisfying and it's really fun.
For a while, they were everywhere.
Only in 2017 could a toy meant to ease anxiety be the most popular thing of the year.
I think I'm too old for this. I don't really get it.
The actual experience exceeds all expectations. It is something that's hard to put into words. It gives people that type of energy, that type of power.
Everyone who bought a ticket to the Fire Festival, you burnt. People showed up to the Fire Festival expecting to show up to the 4 seasons of music festivals, and instead they got the Motel 6.
They kind of had to do these sort of FEMA tents to fit people in, and people were being held in pens.
My favorite part was this meal they got, which was in one of those styrofoam shells, and it was a slice of cheese and a piece of bread.
All the celebrities that promoted it were like, my bad, we're not going, and also, you're dumb.
And so all these people who paid so much money for these tickets are tweeting they gave me a piece of cheese and I can't get off the island. What do I do?
Another passenger recorded this altercation. Look at this. At Chicago's O'Hare Airport, United Airlines says the man was one of 4 people chosen at random to give up their seats to flight crew. Wow, look at that.
United Airlines had the audacity to drag a man off of a flight this year, and someone had the presence of mind to record it. They were ruthless. It was so unnecessary. Like, it's bad enough that like we have to like fly in these tubes with our knees like pinned to another chair. Like, let's not add insult to injury by literally insulting and injuring the passengers.
In upstate New York today, a mother gave birth to a baby with more than 1 million people watching.
April's 15-month pregnancy kept the virtual world captivated for hours at a time. The 15-year-old inspired this viral video of a pregnant mom dancing in a giraffe mask.
Everyone was watching her, I guess, go into labor for a long amount of time, right? Why? Why did we watch that?
Yeah, it was months. It was sort of a countdown that lasted way longer than it was supposed to. I mean, there were like thousands of people watching this video at the same time, and then when it happened, it was like 20 seconds, and then we had a baby giraffe. It was just so quick, so much buildup, and then it happened so quickly.
Well, a hippopotamus at the Cincinnati Zoo has been a viral sensation since birth.
But now Fiona the hippo is upping her game, you could say. Fiona pulled off a feel-good photo bomb during a marriage proposal at the zoo. Take a look. Nick Cabell popped the question to girlfriend Haley Rule. They're sitting there in front of the hippo exhibit, and Fiona presided over the proposal.
My favorite story of 2017 was definitely Fiona the hippo.
It really feels like she just ripped off April. Did people watch her give birth too?
We followed Fiona as she grew up, as she learned to swim.
Fiona the hippo is the Beyonce of the hippo world. And I'm not using hyperbole. Her publicist at the zoo said that it is literally like she represents Beyonce.
She was the biggest celebrity of the year.
Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain.
Chris Cornell, lead singer of Soundgarden, Audio Slave, just a wonderful songwriter, great musician, what a voice.
That was so sad because he was a person that gave voice to a certain kind of suffering. And you really heard in his music the darkness that he was ultimately wrestling with. So to have him die because of that suffering and darkness, it feels like he gave us this insight into what he was going through in a way that we can only be grateful for, but it also feels especially tragic because now you listen to that music and you hear his pain.
We have new details on a deadly attack in Portland.
He is seen on surveillance camera yelling racial and anti-Muslim slurs at 2 teenage girls on a commuter train before stabbing 3 Good Samaritans who were trying to stop him.
I saw myself in those young girls, especially like young women of color. The fact that people feel so comfortable now, especially in their hatred, is what's really uncomfortable. I'm happy though that there are men like those guys who did stand up for those young ladies, because it helps to keep the world in somewhat of a balance. That, as horrible as that guy was who's berating these young women, for every one terrible person, there's at least 3 good people that are trying to combat that divisiveness and that hatred.
We begin tonight with a developing story in England, where there was a deadly explosion at an arena in Manchester, where the American pop singer Ariana Grande was performing.
The chaos began just as the Ariana Grande concert came to an end. Video posted online shows people running to escape in what concertgoers described as a stampede. Parents were waiting outside the arena to pick up children when they described hearing several explosions.
22 people, including children, were killed in this bombing. Officials now say 119 people were treated at hospitals. 64 of them are still hospitalized at this hour.
The Manchester concert bombing was super, super shocking and super sad. The fact that people, and mostly a lot of kids and teens, were just living their lives, going to see a concert with their friends and with their family, and that they were met, at the end of the concert with this horrific bombing. It was so hard to watch.
It's tough because people aren't safe anywhere, but you can't stop living your life.
A national fraternity at Penn State University is suspended after the death of a student.
Timothy Piazza's family has not seen the video that, according to the grand jury report, shows fraternity members carrying Piazza's limp body upstairs, smacking him in the face and pouring liquid on him as he goes in and out of consciousness for hours.
Heartbreaking for the parents. You send your kids to school, that's not how it's supposed to end up.
It seems like every year when Rush comes around, there's another death or severe injury or hospitalization. I think that it's an epidemic that's happening on college campuses, and it has happened for a long time.
So the Penn State one was especially brutal because it was really a death by neglect. Not only did he have that much alcohol, he then fell down a flight of stairs and lay at the bottom of the stairs for hours. Nobody helping him, nobody sending him to the hospital, nobody taking care of him. And then the fraternity covered it up.
I was just in college just a few years ago, wasn't that long ago. And you think about the frats and the sororities and things like that, and I'm just like, well, why does hazing have to be a thing? To see his family dealing with this and the fact that this death could have been prevented is just a very, very horrible thing to watch. It was definitely avoidable, and the poor kid just like, he didn't have anybody there that was looking out for him.
We have confirmed that FBI Director James Comey has been fired.
This is quite shocking because it's very rare. It's really only happened one time in history where the president has fired the director of the FBI.
James Comey got fired in the most embarrassing way possible because your boy was out of town when it happened.
I found out probably around the same time as James Comey.
He was in California and he basically had to learn that he got fired from the news.
In the Shakespearean drama that is Trump's America, we do not know the role that James Comey will end up playing. If this is Harry Potter, he's like Snape.
When Donald Trump fired James Comey, it was a shocking moment. It was, yes, definitely people were surprised. I think we've now reached a point with Donald Trump where the bar is raised so high for what will surprise us. We just don't know.
I'm really not sure how to pronounce it. Here it is in its original usage from a tweet 6 minutes after midnight. Despite the constant negative press, Covfefe?
Covfefe. Covfefe.
I've been saying Covfefe. I've heard Covfefe.
I say
You've
Covfefe.
You said Anne-Marie says Covfefe. You say corn cob.
Yeah,
I landed on corn cob. That's where I'm sticking.
There have been so many different interpretations of what that is. You have people that are pro-Trump saying this proves that he's a genius. He knows this word that no one else knows. And then you have people on the left saying, okay, he's drunk. He doesn't even know what he's tweeting. I'm kind of in the middle. I think it was maybe a typo. I think it's hilarious the way that it kind of blew up. And I think some people, at least in the middle, were able to unite and say, okay, this is funny.
CNN is ending its relationship with comedian Kathy Griffin. The move comes just a day after Griffin posed for this controversial photo. She's holding what appears to be the severed head of President Trump.
I'm all about free speech. I believe in free speech, and I know that everyone in America does. It probably was not the best time to do something like that, and it probably wasn't the right kind of free speech to exercise in this climate or in any climate. Like, nobody wants to see the current leader of the free world with like blood dripping down their neck and like beheaded. Like, no matter what your politics are, that's not really a pleasant image. And people really raged. Like, people were really upset at her for that. And she's still dealing with the backlash of one picture that she took.
Gunfire pierced the air for 10 agonizing minutes as James Hodgkinson opened fire.
Emergency crews rushed injured House Majority Whip Steve Scalise into a helicopter after a shooter opened fire during an early morning baseball practice for congressional Republicans.
Because it feels like the level of rhetoric, violent rhetoric, and tension is really at an all-time high in our country. Some things have happened that our people who are unstable and didn't need much to be pushed in one direction have reacted with this violence.
He was cited as a Bernie Sanders supporter. It seemed to be a political attack.
And it was another example of how the political tensions between the two sides have gotten to the point where violence seems like a solution to some people, which it should never be.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair.
So originally, the only countries that were holdouts about signing this agreement were us, Nicaragua, and Syria, which is kind of says something about this agreement. If every nation in the world, basically, with the exception of these three, are signing it, and now we're the only ones.
You need some kind of global agreement. And the Paris Accords aren't perfect, and there are flaws in the Paris Accords, but at least we've got a global agreement. At least it sets targets. At least we're working towards it. And then Donald Trump withdraws us.
Do we have an intention to want to help the environment and want to curb global warming? Yes. Does that mean we have to do it in this capacity? No. And so I think that's so important, right? So what does it say to the rest of the world? I think it should say, we're not going to be beholden to an agreement that I think mischaracterizes a lot of U.S. domestic natural gas and coal and fossil fuel output on behalf of other countries that we know are not going to comply.
President Trump ran on an America First agenda, and I think pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord was really evidence of that.
Otto Warmbier, the U.S. student freed from North Korea last week, has died. Warmbier had been returned to the U.S. in a coma on June 13th and then hospitalized.
Warmbier suffered what hospital officials described as a severe neurological injury during his captivity.
Otto Warmbier was an American who was in North Korea on a sort of a tourism trip, and he took a propaganda poster, which he had been warned not to do, and he tried to put it in his suitcase and bring it home. And for that, he was arrested by the North Korean police and within hours, basically, was put in prison. And when he was sent back, it was because he was in such bad shape that he died pretty soon after returning to the country. It was a glimpse inside North Korea that simply the act of taking a poster could end your life.
North Korea has been really testing the waters.
It seems that this president and Kim Jong-un have a very particularly hostile relationship. Multiple missile tests throughout the year, increased sanctions.
As someone who voted for Trump, let me say that I have not been a huge fan of Trump using Twitter as a way of diplomacy or interacting with foreign leaders.
Rocket Man.
Tonight, Kim Jong-un shot off his mouth, calling President Trump a mentally deranged dotard.
Donald Trump called Kim Jong-un, I think, short and fat, which is diplomacy unlike anything we'll likely see again, and we've not seen already. Whether the name calling is going to be effective, who knows? It certainly has the virtue of never been tried before.
North Korea is increasingly defiant and lacking any sort of semblance of reality. It seems that they're quite hell-bent on wanting to get into a conflict. I don't think we should give it to them. When someone wants a fight, it's usually a fight you don't want to pick. That would not end well for either side. I mean, we would end up winning, but at what cost is the question.
At least 7 are dead and more than 30 are in hospitals following a night of terror in London. ISIS is now claiming responsibility.
Things have changed here since Saturday's attack, most notably these barriers that popped up overnight here on Westminster Bridge and others to stop vehicles from driving onto the sidewalk.
In 2017, cars really became the new weapon of choice for people who wanted to commit mass killings.
It is a sad state of affairs that there are so many of these things happening that it's hard to keep them straight.
The attack in Barcelona, the one in New York City on Halloween.
It's happening so frequently, and it's happening in so many places that none of these tragedies can hold the attention of the world for very long because there's another one right behind it.
You actually started documenting it as soon as you got into the car.
I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
As more and more has come out about James Comey and as he's become more active on Twitter, I think that he is more political than we thought in the past.
When you watch James Comey testify before Congress, you're like, wow. There are people in public service who take this very, very seriously.
Yeah, I remember just Twitter being mad funny because he's just yes, I do have a recollection of that. I do have record of that somewhere. I did take notes on that meeting. What'd you have for breakfast today? I did take a picture of my breakfast this morning, but I will have to refer to that because I do believe I had Cheerios, but they could have been Honey Nut, and I'm not exactly sure. That was the big thing, Comey got his receipts.
He is an interesting character. 10 years from now, the biography of James Comey, that's gonna be a good book.
So many bad things happened to women in 2017, And Wonder Woman came in and took us all in her arms and said, it's gonna be okay. This movie was so good. It was so important. It was so important to little girls, to grown women.
I loved Wonder Woman. I cried within the first, minute.
Not since Marley and Me have I heard more people crying in a movie theater, but this time it was out of happiness because Wonder Woman made us feel so good and so empowered.
A smash hit in the box office with Patty Jenkins, the first female director to gross over $100 million in opening weekend. That's huge.
A powerful fighter and a powerful force for good who also is a woman. And that's not a detriment to her power, it's part of it. I mean, there were so many moments during that movie where you watched it and were just like, yes, thank you. This is so cool. Finally.
The Russia investigation the president calls fake has just become a very real problem for his son. Today, Donald Trump Jr. released an exchange of emails in which he accepts what's purported to be an offer of help from the Russian government in his father's campaign against Hillary Clinton.
Publicist Rob Goldstone told Trump Jr. this is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. Trump Jr. responded, if it's what you say, I love it.
In the middle of all this continuing discussion of Russia and Russia affecting the election and Russia being involved in helping Trump win, Donald Trump Jr. released many emails that he had with someone who had promised intel on Hillary Clinton that would help the Trump campaign.
In June of 2016, he had some fairly suspicious meetings with the Russians.
And he released it, he claimed, in the name of transparency, but it might have had something to do with the fact that the New York Times was going to release all of these emails really shortly thereafter. So in some way, he was doing that thing where it's like, you can't dump me, I'm breaking up with you first.
And a lot of people said that that was proof that the campaign tried to collude with the Russians, but really that doesn't prove enough.
I remember watching the Republican National Convention and somebody came on and said, Don Jr., that guy's presidential material himself. And other people who think the guy is a total clown who's going to be in jail.
Press Secretary Sean Spicer has resigned. The White House announced that Sarah Huckabee Sanders will take his place next month, and Anthony Scaramucci will lead the administration's communications team.
President Trump has found a kind of kindred spirit in his newly appointed communications director. Anthony Scaramucci communicates the way the president does. He uses big gestures, simple language, and brings a business perspective to how Washington should work.
The Mooch lasted as communications director for only 10 days. 10, that's not even a whole pay period.
Guy comes in, Scaramucci's been sort of working with Trump, made money on Wall Street. He's got the look of some kind of ex-boxer or something. He seems like somebody who might kind of take control, maybe be good with the press, maybe be tough in the way Trump really likes.
I've never been a journalist, but I have played a journalist on television. I used to host Wall Street Week.
Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch. I liked him. I think that he was very smooth.
And then he immediately gets on the phone with the New Yorker.
He said a lot of very vulgar things about his coworkers.
While Ryan Lizza is recording. He lasted 10 days. To get fired from the Trump White House for saying offensive things, you have to say really offensive things. It was like a firecracker that seems exciting. You light it, it kind of goes wrong and blows up the table around you and then goes out.
While most Americans were sleeping, the 7-year Republican battle to repeal and replace Obamacare died on the floor of the United States Senate.
In the wee hours of the morning, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell said he had exhausted all options.
This is a disappointment.
Ms. Murkowski.
No. Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Maine's Susan Collins were the first to buck their party, as they have all week.
Thank you, Collins!
That left Arizona's John McCain. He flashed a gasp-inducing thumbs down. Devastating McConnell, as Democrat Chuck Schumer shushed his elated troops.
Over the summer, we saw the Republican Party finally get serious about some version of a health care repeal.
President Trump and his minions are treating their new healthcare bill like a friend who wants you to listen to a song, and if you don't like it, they're like, no, but just listen to it again. It's like fetch. They keep trying to make Trump care happen, and it's not gonna happen.
Trump says we're gonna get rid of Obamacare, and it seems like they're so close. They keep getting close, and they try once. It doesn't quite get through the Senate. They try twice, it doesn't quite get through the Senate. They try again. And then finally, there's the climactic moment. It happens at like 11 o'clock at night, and they're one vote away from kind of nixing Obamacare and doing what the Republicans have been saying they're going to do since the day it came through. And then here comes John McCain.
McCain, right?
I respect John McCain a lot, and I think he's someone that chooses principle over party. I do think that he was wrong in that decision.
He voted no, and he totally sank Republican efforts to knock away Obamacare. It was like one of those basketball games where some surprising person hits the three-pointer with the team down by 2 and the clock running down to 0.00. It was just a crazy moment, and whether you're on the team that won or the team that lost, the drama was wild.
R. Kelly at the center of explosive allegations. At least 2 sets of parents reported the 50-year-old singer to police. One set of parents claim it was as if their daughter was brainwashed. BuzzFeed News cites 3 more sources who claim that 6 women live in properties rented by Kelly, and he allegedly controls every aspect of their lives.
Is R. Kelly's music so good that we would ignore the fact that he has women allegedly captive? I'm not understanding why. I'm not understanding how people could hear the incredibly detailed and horrific allegations against R. Kelly and still be like, still like his music though.
Chester Bennington was definitely like one of my favorite artists. Linkin Park was my favorite band, and I mean is my favorite band. I remember I was sitting at my desk when we heard that Chester Bennington had committed suicide, and I had to like leave my desk to like go cry in the bathroom because I remember listening to Meteora and Hybrid Theory like all the time when I was growing up. He was really like a big part of my life growing up. And I know that for a lot of millennials and a lot of young people, that was really, really hard to come to terms with, is that there was so much pain in somebody that brought me so much comfort.
In his inaugural address, President Trump said, "When you open your heart to patriotism, there's no room for prejudice." But today, the commander-in-chief decided there is no room for patriotic transgender Americans willing to serve their country in the U.S. military.
So Trump announces that he's going to ban transgender people in the military, which is a big deal, right? Transgender rights are a huge issue in America right now. You know, a lot of us have transgender members of our family or transgender friends, you know, and it's something that's becoming very prevalent. And then suddenly Trump announces that he's going to ban transgender people in the military, and he does it on Twitter?
Lots of backlash, lots of transgender military members denounced it. You know, the military was pretty in support of it, at least the leadership. Some people further down, not so much. I don't think that issue is going to go away anytime soon.
All of a sudden, here's a tweet, no transgender people in the military. Oh, really? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I don't know. We should probably debate this here in America.
Over the weekend, Unite the Right brought together hate groups from around the country, including neo-Nazis, KKK, and white pride groups.
They were expecting several thousand protesters, and they all showed up.
On Friday, men marched with tiki torches on the University of Virginia campus, and Saturday they marched downtown brandishing Nazi salutes and chanting, "Hail Trump."
One person is dead and 19 injured after a speeding vehicle drove into a group of protesters marching peacefully through downtown Charlottesville.
While Confederate statues stand silent and lifeless, violent extremism is very much alive in America. In Charlottesville, we saw and heard jarring reminders of America's darkest days.
Oh, God. So Charlottesville was one of those moments where everybody knew there were going to be protests in Charlottesville, and they were going to be sort of alt-right protests. and there would be counter-protests. And you sort of hoped that it would all be kind of peaceful and go away. And then it just, as happens so often, oh wait, these alt-right protests, they're Nazis, they're Klansmen, and they're walking with tiki torches and screaming, Jews will not replace us. And then there's the counter-protest, and then one of the guys in the alt-right drives his car into a crowd and kills this young woman. It was just awful. And there are moments in America where you think, this is just a stage, this country is strong. And then there are moments where you think, what is happening? You know, are we Germany in the early 1930s? Is something just cataclysmically awful about to happen? We have actual Nazis marching in America who kill a protester. And then the president gives a press conference where he says, oh, they're bad people on all sides.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
It seems like a pretty easy thing to do to say, you know, to condemn Nazis. But Donald Trump didn't immediately do that.
That was one of the moments where I really feared for the country, because we've been going in the other direction, right? We've been going towards inclusion. And the notion that Nazis are coming back and the president is not going to denounce them after they've killed someone, that made me worry.
The wife of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin made news with an Instarant on Instagram. It all started when Louise Linton posted a picture of herself yesterday getting off a government plane, mentioning designer labels from her outfit, including Hermes and Tom Ford. An Oregon woman responded, "Glad we could pay for your little getaway. #deplorable." Linton fired back, "Pretty sure the amount we sacrifice per year is a lot more than you'd be willing to sacrifice, and you're adorably out of touch."
It was just the most mean girl response that she sort of then apologized a little bit for, but not really. And every subsequent appearance, it's just, I mean, she sort of is just leaning into this a little bit. I mean, the latest one is her wearing black gloves up to her elbow and this black coat, holding a sheet of dollar bills with her husband, and just with this look on her face like she has puppies in her handbag that she's going to skin and to make into a coat.
I think that might have been the first time they'd seen $1 bills, so maybe they were just shocked.
I mean, she's like campaigning to be a Disney villain, basically. And I hope she wins, because I'll watch that movie. She's a great villain.
It is the year 2017, and a total eclipse of the sun is about to begin.
This crowd is very, very excited. Anthony, this is just incredible
to watch.
Gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. We're in darkness.
Oh, you can see it. You can see it. There it is.
I totally cried.
Why did you cry?
I don't know. It was just so awesome.
Try to remember where you were, what was going on when you saw this happen.
The solar eclipse is the biggest celebrity of 2017. People could not stop talking about the eclipse. They were talking about the eclipse like it was like Brad, Angelina, George Clooney, Beyonce, and Jay-Z all wrapped up into one.
So the solar eclipse, that was great. It was like the moment where the red states and the blue states genuinely came together. Like, everybody in America was interested in the solar eclipse.
I got the little glasses, went up on the roof, you know, made a whole big thing about it. All these different like ways of looking through it, like using the cardboard boxes and the paper plates. We were all like little kids on like a school field trip that day.
People were ready to risk it all for the eclipse. They were like, I'm gonna give up my eyesight, I'm gonna give up my job because I gotta get in my RV and drive 30 hours to go get into the path of totality. People were losing it for the eclipse, and with reason. Like, when the earth stunts on you, like, you can't help but take notice. The earth was like, yes, like, y'all will gag.
The cardinal rule of an eclipse is that you cannot use it as an excuse to point your eyeballs at the sun. It will hurt your eyes. And they made it very clear. And of course, Donald Trump, who does not like being told what to do, clearly decided to celebrate this eclipse by staring directly at the sun.
I remember watching the clip, and he looked up at the sky at the eclipse, and the people in the crowd started being like, no, sir, don't do it.
These things that don't happen in America anymore happened, right? people coming together across lines. Like, there's nothing to argue about the solar eclipse. It's cool. Secondly, science, right? Actually caring about science.
You know, it's the rare pop culture moment where people are genuinely interested in learning about something.
That's good. We haven't had that in a while.
Video inside the eye wall of Hurricane Harvey shows the power of a Category 4 as it barreled into the Gulf Coast last night.
Wow, super strong winds right now. Overnight, Irma continued its slow crawl north across Florida.
The communication has been cut. Power is out. Folks here aren't even able to reach relatives.
I know that leaders aren't supposed to cry, and especially not on TV. But we are having a humanitarian crisis.
We had Harvey, and then we had Irma.
And Maria.
We had total devastation in the Caribbean. We had total devastation in Puerto Rico. Total devastation in Houston. And that was a moment where if you haven't been concerned about climate change, you really ought to get concerned about climate change.
In Puerto Rico, there's been a lot of controversy around the government's response to Hurricane Maria and if their response has been significant enough or helpful enough.
The fact that you have a Real Housewife of New York, Bethany Frankel, doing more for the people of Puerto Rico than the United States president is crazy to me.
Guys, like, this is a part of the U.S. Like, this is America. This is the U.S. and we should be working just as hard to make sure that they get aid and they get what they need just as much as we did with Houston.
Oh, say, can you see?
One of the hardest hits in the NFL today took place on the sidelines.
President Trump is also taking on the wide world of sports this weekend, drawing fire from athletes and executives.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired.
So Colin Kaepernick started kneeling during the national anthem at football games when he was with the San Francisco 49ers because he was protesting police brutality.
And it's become this huge political movement.
There are those that think that to kneel is anti-American, and then there are different people that think to kneel is pro-American. You know, to kneel is actually saying this is America.
I'm a defender of the First Amendment. I believe in a peaceful protest, but my personal opinion is that there is a better way to protest than disrespecting the men and women who have fought and died for our country. And you know, these players can say over and over again, well, that's not what I want to do. You might not want to do something, but that is what you are doing.
All these right-wing politicians got it so twisted and decided to twist the narrative into something that was anti-American, anti-troops, anti-flag. And then you have the president calling players who are kneeling out of respect for people who lost their lives and out of respect for people who shared their skin color and saying that they're sons of bitches. That is the most disrespectful thing to the country that I could think of.
Football games are where we're going to have our debates about free speech in the United States of America. And not only that, but the president is going to be on the side of shutting down speech, and offensive linemen are going to be on the side of free speech. It's kind of bizarre, but that's 2017.
Hugh Hefner died last night of natural causes at the Playboy Mansion. He was 91.
Well, he certainly changed the magazine culture. He changed the American sex culture, if you will. But that came with some controversy. Back in the day, there were a lot of protests about how women were portrayed in the magazine.
Bedroom doors in this country were firmly closed, and then Hefner pushed them open.
Sex is one of the best things on this planet. I think we need to get our heads around that fact.
The reaction to Hugh Hefner's death just was interesting culturally, because it was almost like a split on whether he should be honored or reviled.
He left behind a really complicated legacy. I think some people see him as a sex-positive icon, and some people see him as someone who exploited women.
And if you think about the times that we live in now with women and the Me Too movement, I think society as a whole, you know, is very split on what his legacy is and what his legacy should be.
Some sad news. The United States men's soccer team will miss the World Cup after losing to Trinidad and Tobago. Well, I know, yeah, but of course we lost. We had to play against Trinidad and Tobago. That's not fair.
I remember going to that at night. I think I was traveling, saying, all right, well, we're good. You know, there have been some hairy moments on the road to qualification, but the U.S. is definitely in. And then I think I was on Twitter late at night, and I started seeing all these sort of sad faces and unhappy jokes and people retweeting some announcer who went rogue, and I was like, oh my God, they did qualify?
I only get hyped for soccer when they make the World Cup, which has been every year that I've been alive, except I guess now this year, next year. So terrible. I'm super upset about it because who am I going to cheer for? Iceland?
It was all very familiar. Millions of Americans glued to their televisions, waiting to hear the fate of O.J. Simpson.
Mr. Simpson, I do vote to grant parole when eligible, and that will conclude this hearing.
Thank you.
I watched OJ's hearing, and all I could think was, don't talk to the panel like that.
I'm no danger to pull a gun on anybody. I've basically spent a conflict-free life.
Like, he wasn't talking to them like someone who wanted them to let him out of prison. He was like kind of indignant, kind of like, you know, flippant, and kind of like he didn't really care if he got out of prison. I was like, does he have like a play that he's in that he wants to stay in for? Because he was not acting like he wanted to get out.
And now he's free to walk the world again and probably be put into Congress the rate it's going now.
Rock legend Tom Petty has died after suffering a cardiac arrest in his Malibu home Sunday night. Petty rose to fame in the 1970s with his band Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The group put out several hits such as American Girl, Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Breakdown, and others that earned them a spot in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was such a blow. Tom Petty always felt like he was kind of like the low-key hero of American music.
There's an argument to be made that Tom Petty, you know, and the Heartbreakers are, you know, the greatest American rock band of all time.
It's always hard for a lot of people, I think, when a music icon dies because, you know, he was a big part of a lot of people's childhoods, a lot of people's road trips.
We've all been at bars when American Girl comes on, or I Won't Back Down comes on, or Writing Down a Dream comes on. And he was such a giant in the industry.
He was so much his own niche. When he died, we suddenly realized what a gift it had been to have him in the first place and what a loss that would be.
As the gunfire erupted, police raced toward the scene past the fleeing crowd.
We're seeing multiple flashes in the middle of Mandalay Bay on the north side, like one of the middle floors.
Be advised, it is automatic fire. Fully automatic fire from an elevated position. Take cover.
We can't worry about victims. We need to stop the shooter before we have more victims. Anybody have eyes on this shooter?
We're shocked, horrified, completely dumbfounded.
The shooter's brother, Eric Paddock, shed no light on a possible motive when he spoke with reporters outside his Orlando home.
No religious affiliation, no political affiliation, no, he just hung out.
I swear, I could have sworn we had deadliest shooting last year. And I was like, damn, is it gonna be like every year somebody's trying to top the deadliest shooting in America?
The Las Vegas incident really brought to light again for, you know, the millionth time, the issue of gun control in this country.
I'm a very big proponent of the Second Amendment. Definitely sympathetic to a bump stock ban. Don't quite understand why those are accessible in the open market.
We're still trying to figure out who he is, what his motive was. So much has been hidden, and we've kind of brushed it under the rug.
It starts to feel like a broken record, you know, something tragic and horrible and ultimately preventable happens. If this person hadn't had access to those guns, then, you know, it wouldn't have happened. It really can't be overstated.
I was like at a loss. Like, I can't believe we're doing this again. The same tags, the same news headlines, literally.
Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is taking a leave of absence after a New York Times report uncovered a long history of sexual harassment allegations.
In the New York Times Tuesday, Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow say Weinstein harassed them early in their careers. And Academy Award winner Mira Sorvino told the New Yorker she was harassed as well.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences voted today to expel Harvey Weinstein. More than 30 women have accused the movie titan of sexual harassment or assault. The Academy is calling for an end to the industry's, quote, shameful complicity and sexually predatory behavior.
The Harvey Weinstein scandal sort of started like the same way that a pot of water starts to boil. At first there were like little bubbles and like you sort of heard things about it. You heard maybe there was a New York Times article coming out, and then all of a sudden it boiled over in a way that I don't think even he expected, and he knows what he did.
Once there was one, there were then many.
Louis C.K., James Toback,
Al Franken, Jeffrey Tambor,
George Takei,
Jeremy Piven.
And then there's Matt Lauer.
We also saw Bill O'Reilly.
Kevin Spacey,
Dustin Hoffman,
R. Kelly, Brett Ratner.
I mean, even Charlie Rose.
Many people. And it really started this movement that made it feel like maybe finally we're at a place where this is not acceptable. So this hashtag started called #MeToo, which was women on Facebook and social media who had been themselves sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, just sharing #MeToo to indicate how widespread it is.
My timeline was just Me Too, top to bottom, which is really sad.
Almost everybody on my Facebook feed has had a Me Too story, and me too.
And I think it was a real wake-up call to a lot of people to realize that this is the norm. It's not the exception.
Women are now being believed, and that's the turning point.
Weeks after 4 U.S. soldiers were killed in Niger, information is still trickling out about exactly what happened.
When the attack was over, 3 U.S. soldiers were mortally wounded, 2 injured, and 1 stranded. Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was separated from the group, and his body recovered 48 hours later by Nigerian forces.
The president called the families of all 4 soldiers, and he is denying accusations he was less than respectful to one of them.
He never said the word hero. He said to the wife, well, I guess he knew what he was getting into. How insensitive can you be?
Gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country, and Trump couldn't even react with basic human empathy. I mean, how bad do you have to be at this to not be able to tell a woman who has lost her husband that you're authentically sorry?
Example of the media that I think they were a little too harsh on President Trump, because I know the way he talks, and I'm sure it wasn't intended to be insensitive.
We saw all kinds of media back and forth between the right saying, oh, President Trump would never be uncompassionate, even John Kelly coming out and saying that's an absolute lie, the left is politicizing this, and then you have people on the left saying, whoa, 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 this is about a commander-in-chief who did not respond well to the deaths of one of his men.
And I think it overshadowed his sacrifice, honestly. It became more about like a he said, she said.
You just have this awful, awful story where it's unhappiness on top of unhappiness, compounded by bad politics, compounded by lying. You know, we just get these messes upon messes upon messes right now, and it's distressing.
The biggest shot in Cavs history. They're going up. Oh my goodness. Hayward came down so hard. Okay, Hayward broke his leg. Hayward has broken his... Oh my gosh.
So I definitely did see that. And my heart sinks with that kind of stuff because I'm like, you're done.
It's the first quarter of the first game. The best player, so excited in Boston, right? Goes up and he's like inside, he bumps. It's not even a foul and he comes down and it's like his leg or ankle snaps in half.
People were crying on the court.
The other players reacted with shock and horror, much like the fans and everybody watching on TV did. I mean, I remember Dwayne Wade got down on one knee, you had players gathering around each other. There was a palpable level of shock and horror.
Watching it, you just, visceral pain for this guy who's at the peak of his athletic career, who wasn't doing something crazy. You know, he didn't blow out his, legs skiing while drunk. He did it while driving to the hoop against Cleveland.
That was a egregious injury. It was terrible to look at.
Planning is underway this morning for a royal wedding in London. I can't wait. I'm not even invited, and I can't wait. The palace announced this morning that Prince Harry is engaged to his girlfriend, American actress Meghan Markle.
The star of the hit drama series Suits.
Pretty. Good. You hit on me.
She's from the U.S., has an African-American mother, and over 2 million followers on social media.
Meghan Markle marrying Prince Harry is being called a 21st century Cinderella story at Buckingham Palace.
When I found out Prince Harry was engaged to Meghan Markle, I reacted as if I myself had gotten engaged to Prince Harry, and I was like, what am I gonna wear? What's my room gonna be like at Buckingham Palace? And is the Queen gonna be nice to me? Up until the day they announced that they were engaged, I didn't know anything about Meghan Markle except for that her name was Meghan Markle, and even that was dicey. And after they announced the engagement, I was like, she's 5'7", she loves purple, she was on Suits, her character's name was Rachel. I went off on Wikipedia.
A small community in South Texas was shattered today by a deadly mass shooting inside a church. A gunman opened fire at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, about 30 miles outside San Antonio. The pastor's wife tells CBS News their 14-year-old daughter was killed, along with many friends.
A pregnant woman and her unborn child are among the dead.
26 people were killed in the Sutherland Springs shooting at a small church down there, and it's just devastated the entire community. I mean, you had a family where kids, where grandkids, where sisters, brothers, fathers, mothers all died. I mean, I don't know how you recover from that. It's sad. I understand that the guy who did it, he suffered from mental illness.
A man who had what many of these shooters have in common, which is domestic violence in their past. And yet we still act as though the primary threat to our country in terms of terrorism is a sort of Muslim ideology instead of what it really is, time after time after time, which is angry white men who have violent issues against women and feelings of entitlement acting out.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Jeff Glor at CBS News headquarters in New York. Good day. President Trump is about to announce a change in what has been U.S. policy for nearly 70 years through 12 administrations. He will say the United States now recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Jerusalem is home to Jewish, Christian, and Muslim holy sites and has long been at the center of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The decision sparked widespread protests in the region. U.S. embassies and consulates were put on high alert after the announcement.
So President Trump has made the very historic and I think brave decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel rather than Tel Aviv. I think that this is absolutely the right step to take. The only reason that Jerusalem is significant to anyone is because it was significant to Israel. It was significant to the Jewish people first. Before it was significant to Christians, before it was significant to Muslims, it was first significant to the Jewish people. It is the rightful capital of Israel.
Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore is facing accusations of sexual misconduct. The Washington Post is now reporting that several women have come forward with claims against the former Alabama Chief Justice. One accuser says that Moore initiated a sexual encounter back in 1979 when she was just 14 years old.
There was kind of a wrestling match of sorts in Alabama. It was an earthquake, you could say. The traditionally Republican state of Alabama surprised the world by electing a Democratic senator. Doug Jones narrowly defeated Roy Moore in yesterday's special election.
Where would the world be without black women, I ask? Well, I know where Doug Jones would be, not in the Senate. Because 98% of black women voted for Doug Jones, and something like 93% of black men voted for Doug Jones to defeat Roy Moore, who, number one, should not have been in the race to begin with. The fact that the bar is so low that the only requirement was like not a pedophile is insane.
I think people are making it too simple by saying the people who are voting for Roy Moore are okay with pedophilia. I don't think that's true. I think that they are trying to decide, okay, with my moral conscience, what is the lesser of two evils? Do I want someone that is a liberal who is going to vote against everything that I stand for, who is adamantly pro-choice, full-term abortion, or am I going to vote for someone who might have a creepy past, but at least I believe in his agenda?
But it cannot be overstated how huge it is that Alabama, which is like the reddest of the red states, turned blue for a Democrat for the first time in a long time.
The yeas are 224 and the nays are 201. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
The tax plan, according to a conservative like me, isn't absolutely perfect. I think it could cut individual taxes even more, but it does double the standard deduction, lowers the corporate tax rate, which I hope is going to boost the economy.
Businesses are a good thing. Incentivizing them to create jobs, I think, is always a net positive. And net increase for the middle class, you get to keep more of your own money, which my taxes are going down, so I'm pretty happy about that.
The Federal Communications Commission today voted to roll back Obama-era regulations on the companies that provide internet service. The commission scrapped what's called net neutrality, which required providers to give websites equal access to the internet.
So just to round out this amazing year that was 2017, just right at the buzzer, the FCC decided to vote to dismantle net neutrality, which means that now it can be monetized and there will be like a money market for how we receive and distribute things on the internet, which means my tweets are about to be $5 a tweet.
So we had a crazy year, didn't we? We had a lot of news.
I feel like just like everything was so consistently bad. Like we thought 2016 was bad, and then this year happened and we learned to not complain.
If I could say anything to the year 2017, I wouldn't say anything because we're not on speaking terms.
There was once upon a time when we didn't think about the political leanings of our neighbor. They were just our neighbor. They were just the person that we knew. And unfortunately, I think in 2017 and maybe in 2016, the art of civil discourse and intellectual debate just kind of got lost.
I really needed this, thank you.
2017, unsubscribe.
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 2017, unsubscribe.